So I needed a distraction, a major distraction. So someone asked me and said, look, the lawyers are not willing to do this. Will you do it? So I said, okay, why not? Because once you go into politics, is 24/7. So I did it, and I got to know some of the leaders. I was very impressed by Rafizi Ramli in particular, young man back then. And that's how I got into politics. I mean, a bit by accident, a bit by chance. But when I was in university, like most of you here, I did Greenpeace, I did Amnesty International, things like that. So there's always a political bone in me anyway.
So you spoke a little bit about the patronage networks that are occurring in UMNO and in the business world. Would you say that your party is immune from those?
I wouldn't say that. Actually, none of the politicians are immune from a patronage system. I'll give you the example of my own constituency. Constituents come in and they ask for help, right? They want to transfer their kids to another school. They want to put their kids to a school. They need my signature for some strange reason. I mean, this is mad, right? You don't come up to a member of parliament and say, look, my kid wants to go to this school. So that is by nature, you're being a patron to him. So the system is built in where patronage is considered a parliamentarian's job. Yeah. Now, political patronage is also dependent on whether you're friends with people in power. In Penang, of course, we have a different government, and in Selangor, we have an opposition government. The Menteri Besar, the Chief Minister, are in position of power. And they can give you or not give you a GLC post. So, how far is patronage alive in the opposition states? And of course, in the federal government, you have lots and lots of this kind of patronage activities as well. But the key point is this. The parliamentarian pay is so low that we are unable to be fully and truly independent. So if you're not independent, you are stuck in some form of patronage system. That's what it is. So I wouldn't say this is a government problem per se, or that the opposition do not face it. I think it's just a culture that is built up over time. And we can break this culture, of course we can. And we should. But we should start with the most basic to ensure that the pay is reasonably well, so that members of parliament are not vulnerable to political influence by way of money. Then later we have to change the whole election funding system, because political parties need money to contest an election. When the state start paying for those, I think we can go quite some way to break those. So there are practical ways to solve it, and there are also philosophical ideas on how to tackle this issue.
Very interesting, and I think a common theme around Southeast Asia.
It is, absolutely.
Yeah, I just wanted to move on to the global Berksy movement. I'm sure everybody is familiar with the coordinated global rallies that happened over the weekend. But the following day, I believe, in KL, there was a government gala parade that happened, which it was reported that there were about 13,000 people at that parade. I can't verify those figures in any way. But what do you think that says about the power or the influence of Barisan Nasional still in Malaysia?
Well, the national parade is not really a political parade of any sort. I mean, there are tourists there, and there are people who genuinely wants to celebrate National Day. So I don't think that's a clear sign of their position of power in mobilizing. I think the one that we should look out for is when the red shirts, also called red shirts, gather up in about a month's time or 2 weeks' time, right? Because where UMNO has said they're going to do a counter rally. Then let's see what they come up with.
I just asked because I think Prime Minister Najib used that opportunity to criticize the Berksy protests as being, I think, a disruption to public order, which was an undemocratic expression of dissent. So, I mean, if that's his perspective, do you think that these rallies are going to have any impact on his stepping down or his reactions in the future?
Well, the impact of the rally in real political terms, nobody's going to resign over this. I mean, if you put 500,000 on the street, I don't think he will resign as well. But what it does is it gives the so-called internal politics some pressure. There might be people in UMNO who feel that a big rally turnout will be, an excuse or an impetus for them to push Najib out. So it does really have some real impact. It's just that it's hidden. If you get people out on the street, the government's not going to resign, but it might agitate UMNO members to try and push him out. So I think that's a real story behind per se. I mean, of course, when we organize per se or people organize per se, they don't talk about this. But the inner workings of Malaysian politics is such that it's more hidden. Most of the things are hidden from public view. Yeah.
But they're implicit, so I
Yeah.
suppose the government would see the Bersih movement as a call for them to, clean up their act at least.
Yes, I mean, they will. If you get a lot of people on the streets, sometimes they feel a lot of pressure. That's without doubt. I don't think he lives in a bubble, but yeah. But the key is still, the internal mechanisms will start moving faster. I mean, it's definitely in the interest of Zahid Hamidi, the Deputy Prime Minister, to see a big rally. I mean, you don't have to read too much into that. That there are a lot of factions in there who are urging this on. That is why Dr. Mahathir came. Yeah. Of course, this rally has taken on a racial dimension. But maybe I'll answer a question on that later. Okay.
I think the last question that I had was just in terms of your role as the Chair of Investment and Trade for the PKR. So that's another area of expertise or another area that you're working in the Malaysian political realm. So what are your feelings on the Malaysian economy at the moment, and how does this movement affect that?
The Malaysian economy is not too bad. I mean, the fundamentals are quite good. The problem is we are facing a potential crisis, and it can get really quite bad, quite fast. Just to use an analogy, back in '97, it was caused by very naughty companies. Lots of companies just overloaded themselves with debts. So it was driven by corporate debt, right? And that made the country vulnerable. In this current one, it's the government that is making the government is making the country vulnerable, in the sense that they have too much of a national debt level. It's too high. And it's all the bonds that they issue. And if it's a government debts, then the rating agencies and the bondholders are just looking at one thing: is the government behaving? If the government is not behaving, and in the case of IMDB as the showcase of government misbehavior, then they lose confidence. That is why they're being punished, and the public then react in such a way, and they lose confidence in the market, and they too run. So what you have is a run on the ringgit. And what started off as a run on the ringgit is now seeing slowdowns in exports and imports as well. And what we are also seeing is, this confidence affecting long-term and short-term investments in the country, domestic and foreign. So what started off as a run is now looking more and more like an economic crisis. The fundamentals are there; they show something. But there's also a scale, what we call the Greenspan scale, is the measure of short-term. Short-term means 1 year debt level, right, to your reserves, and that's below 1, below a ratio of 1. Ratio of 1 is really the bare minimum. So once we get into a below a ratio of 1, the great fear is we are not able to cover short-term debt repayment with our currency level. So then that will start the whole cycle of issues again. Okay.
And do you see Prime Minister Najib resigning as a solution to that problem in any sense?
It really depends on who succeeds him. I think he has to go, because that will be a positive news to the market, right, to the economy. But his replacement is going to be that big issue. If it's going to be a technocrat, it will be really good for the country. If it's going to be another politician, not a statesman, then we have a
You hate
major
it when
problem.
politicians are in charge.
No, I mean, there are two types of politicians. You have statesmen and you have politicians, right? What we need is really a statesman to come up to the fore and stabilize the market. Yeah, so I think he has to go. He definitely has to go. that there's nothing he can do in the short term or medium term to repair his international image, and that's going to be dragging the country down.
Very interesting. I might open it up to questions from the floor now. So I might take a couple of questions. Is that okay? So there was one at the back in the corner. Yep. And okay. Yep. Go ahead.
Currently as an opposition, you're going through some changes. So do you foresee a time where you come together and to be seen more as an alternative government? I mean, now is a great time because the government is weak, but I don't see the opposition really capitalizing.
Is that the question?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe just in the black. Sam, could I get you to bring the mic over?
Sure.
If you think you can speak loud enough, go ahead.
Wong Chen, first of all, thank you so much for being here today. I think for those of us Malaysians abroad, it's been really good to have some insight into what's going on. I have a couple of questions. The first one revolves around the 1MDB IPP purchase and the statement that they had also inherited 8 billion worth of debt from concessions that were about to come to an end. At any point, are Ananda Krishnan and Ralph Marshall out of the legal jurisdiction to answer what was sold and why it was marked up in that manner and address the 8 billion debt that these IPPs had been sold with? And my second question is, what is your take on Tun M's presence at the birthday rally? Because for those of us who were involved in the initial rallies in Malaysia, it was certainly quite surprising to see him present at a rally. So those are my two questions for you.
Okay, should I
And
answer
I
them?
might just ask from now on if we could keep the questions to one, and if everyone's had a go, we can go back around again. So.
Yeah. Let me just answer the three questions first. Now, the first one is the opposition not getting their act together. That's true. We've got a difficult time with PAS lately. They did not support the Bersih rally officially, so we don't know how this is gonna develop. Of course, we have Harapan Baru coming up, and then we've got some potential problems in Selangor because of the Harapan Baru and PAS split. Now, why is the opposition not capitalizing on the situation? I think primarily because Anwar is in jail. Any leadership in PKR, we need to settle some internal issues, right? There must be one voice coming through to lead the party. Wan Azizah, of course, is the president, but I think she needs more political clout and political help in order to lead Pakatan Rakyat or the future new Pakatan. So we're facing that kind of problem. So until that happens, we're gonna still bicker and quarrel within ourselves. But I'm sure it's gonna settle down quite soon, within 6 months to a year. Most of these issues should be ironed out, especially with Harapan Baru coming in. So we're going through a transition period, and transition just needs time. If you change the CEO of a company, right, it takes you 6 months to a year to get things settled down. So it's just a question of time. I think there are a few leaders out there who are senior enough and clever enough and strategic enough to cobble together one new leadership under one uniting factor, one person to unite the group. It's hard to say. I mean, it's really hard to say. I can't really predict. But trust me, we are trying our best to try and sort this out. Okay. Now, 1MDB, Ananda Krishnan and Ralph Marshall, you know them quite well, do you? No, the 8 billion extra, that nobody knew about that, right? That disclosure was made by 1MDB themselves. I read the reports from companies, from such companies as Maybank Research. They were saying that it's just overpriced. Nobody saw this 8 billion. I think it's I think it is 8 billion, it's not 6 billion, right? 8 billion extra inherited debts. So I don't understand. As a corporate lawyer, if you have inherited debt, that should then be discounted at the sale value, at the purchase price value. So it hasn't. The chances of getting Ananda to speak, I don't think so. Maybe the PAC will summon him. Yeah. Now on Dr. Mahathir, why was he there? I think his hatred for Najib is more than his hatred for Bersih. That's why he's there. And as I said earlier, he's really trying to get UMNO to do something. I mean, he has set the terms of a vote of no confidence, so long as UMNO is still in power. So I'm almost certain his presence there 2 days in a row is really to try to get the UMNO guys to agitate more and try to push him out internally. Because it's not in Mahathir's interest to see an interim government between the opposition and the government. Right? He doesn't want that. He doesn't want that at all. He wants UMNO to continue to perpetually rule this country. He just doesn't want Najib there. Okay? Let's take the other questions.
There's lots of questions. I'll try and get to everyone. Maybe just on the end here, and then this gentleman, what she's done.
I don't know whether. Thank you for your talk, Wong Chen. So I don't know whether that answers the question already on the top of her asking you whether that would be a solution for the Prime Minister to step down. But how is he to step down? That's my question.
Thanks. What is the first of all, I think your Hong Kong speech was much more nicer, less structured. Anyway, it went viral, so a lot of it, I mean, you have said more. But having said that, what is the effect on the GST having on the people? It came in on the 1st of April. I was there a few weeks ago. I noticed that a lot of prices has gone up, and I noticed that people have rounded up to another whatever cents more. And you're very optimistic about the economic status. I see lots of old men and old women taking up lots of money, changing it into US or Singapore currency, or even saying, oh, it doesn't matter because the Indian fellows don't have foreign currency. Even Thai bahts is better. And you can see the deterioration is phenomenal. You know, I mean, yeah, Australia is just doing just badly, but at least ours is stable. You know, from 330 to 380 to $4 to 420. I mean, where is it going? I mean, with due respect, not that I like Mahathir, he's damn it very much and called a halt to it. Remember during the Asian crisis, and he stabilized it. You know, then the people are just suffering. I mean, yeah, even though the Chinese have devalued the RMB, but having said that, even if you buy things from China, it is going to be extremely expensive. And the other comment before I go, I want to comment is this pathetic, ridiculous, you know, showmanship of trying to get a Clairview castle. And even the Interpol says that there is no, we are not going to pursue it. It isn't a stupid thing in the eyes of the international public that Malaysia has sunk into. You should give a clap to him, not me.
Yeah. Okay. Let me deal with how is the Prime Minister to step down. I mean, he can voluntarily step down by just resigning. Otherwise, it's a vote in Parliament, a vote of no confidence in Parliament, where we need 112, but it's not so simple. Numerically, you need 112, but you will not get it unless, and Dr. Mahathir said it, unless there is a majority from UMNO itself that will continue to rule. So we're looking at 160, 170, so that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. Now, the other way to do it is to go to the palace, and we've seen this in the Perak constitutional crisis, where you can appeal to the Agong by showing your numbers, your declarations or statutory declarations and ask the argument to intervene. That's not been tested, but that's possible. So those are the three paths that he could be removed from office voluntarily, vote on no confidence, or through the palace. Now, regarding GST, I run also, other than the investment and trade department, I also look at analytics, election analytics for the party. We think that the GST will give an 8% swing to the opposition. To win the next election, we just need about 2 to 3%. So it's really good. So we're on track to win the next election, just on those numbers alone. But things will normalize by end of the year. Yeah, people get used to GST. So that 8% will come down to about 4%. So it's going to be a really tight election. Now, that is from the election point of view, the impact of GST. Now, from the people suffering, I mean, we see that on the streets. We see it all the time. Malaysians, in particular the Chinese community, have a flight tendency. The right, I don't know whether because we come from, our ancestors come from China and whatever it is, or we have, this great discomfort. When there is a crisis, we tend to just go to the banks, take out our money, or convert the currency and move it to Singapore or somewhere safer. Now, you can't blame people for doing this kind of thing. You can't. But what we know is it doesn't help the general economy when you start doing this kind of thing. So whether it's the people's fault or whether it's the government that has triggered the people to act in such a manner, some semblance of confidence building is essential, whether you're in the opposition or the government. And I think having survived, when I was during the 97-98 crisis, I was just a young lawyer. And it was really, really bad to see what has happened in the country from 98 onwards in particular. The real pain was 98, 99, 2000. I mean, politics aside, securing jobs for people, making sure that people can feed themselves, I think that's the priority for most members of parliament. I mean, I take that view. Yes, it's a bonus to us when we come for election that the economy is not doing so well, and so forth, but it makes no difference to a lot of the very poor people in Malaysia. I mean, in my area, I have 40,000 hardcore poor people. I don't care whether I'm with the government or I'm against the government. They just want to make sure they have a job. So the economy is looking quite bad. And the poor people are streaming into my office asking for help. So I really hope that the nonsense about moving money out and and capital flight and losing confidence on all this will just cool down a bit, right? Slow down a bit, and let's try to focus on just trying to get the economy back into a more stable position. Because if you start moving things out, if you're a rich person in Malaysia, you can't move everything out. You can't move all your assets out. When you start moving your money out, your property prices will drop. If you own a building, it will drop as well in value. So they have to look at the bigger picture. I think that the most important thing is to stop the panic. It's hard to do this. We're both politicians, and also we're trying to look at it from an economic point of view to assist. I hope that answers your question. I'm just blabbering along. Sorry. Okay. You choose.
Let's go to the middle over here. I'll come to this side for the next round.
Thank you, Wong Chen. It's good to see you in Sydney. My question for you is this. As a Malaysian right now in Australia, I have many friends and family and in business as well, with colleagues. Every time you mention you're Malaysian, they laugh at you. Rightly so, but I myself am struggling to tell them or explain to them why they should invest in Malaysia or what prospects Malaysia has. So I'd love for you to share some insights to what we actually have going for us as opposed to what we read in the news, which is quite negative.
And the yellow just behind you.
Thanks, Wong Chen, for that talk. I disagree with my friend. I think this is much more interesting than the Hong Kong one. You mentioned that the opposition had a role to play in exposing this. Why now that the opposition is so successful? I believe that Dr. Mahathir had a big part to play. My question to you is, what is the impact of Dr. Mahathir's part in exposing this? And is he the main player? And secondly, what does that say about Malaysian democracy if a Prime Minister, after leaving the office for, I don't know, how 12 years, still wields so much power in the country? And perhaps can you comment on that?
Shall I answer first?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's a bit long.
Do two
Okay.
at a time.
Yeah, thank you for the question on investing in Malaysia. Sure, you know, the thing about the news coming from Malaysia is just the ridiculous news that comes up all the time. Fundamentally, you know, Malaysia is strategically placed globally and geographically. I think I was a geography student this time, right? So it's so important we're on the Straits of Malacca that we control that path. That is the trading route between Middle East to China, India to China, Indonesia, you know, so we're right smack in the center. The country is just perfectly situated for trade. So Malaysia, in fact, the strong point about trading in Malaysia is trading and services. And the fact that we are multicultural and we speak multi languages, where we have the Chinese, the Indians and the Malays to deal with, to simplify things, to deal with the Indonesian, which is a big economy, right? The Chinese to deal with the Chinese, the Indians with the Indians. That's a very simplistic way to put it, but we are sitting in the center of these three superpowers. This country is perfect. There's no natural disaster, occasional flood here and there, right? No earthquake and stuff. So it's really those are the strong points, and the Malaysians are entrepreneurial, all of them. In my 24 years as a corporate lawyer, I've served Malay businessmen, Chinese businessmen, and Indian businessmen. They're just businessmen, all of them, right? Very smart, very clever. A lot of them are powering the Hong Kong economy. A lot of them are in Singapore powering the Singaporean economy. You know, we just need to get the politics aside, get rid of all the silly people making silly statements. Fundamentally, the country is great, you know. We've got Clive that lives there. You know, Clive has adopted Malaysia in that sense. He knows, you know, it's just good, right? If you go and talk to a Korean investor or somebody, you know, that is now in Singapore, right? If they live in Singapore and work in Singapore, an expat in Singapore, they prefer to live in Malaysia. We have good laws and we have a low crime rate, you know, because there's a lot more land and people are much more relaxed and friendlier. You know, you can play golf more. I mean, it's just built to be a regional hub. That's what the country is. It is. It's got ample land and good people. So just keep telling people that, and I'm sure, you know, you're a nice fellow. I'm sure you can convince some of them. When the politics do change, whether it's 5 years from now or 10 years from now, or 15 years from now, there is still a Malaysia to be there for us to really grow. Of course, we have the problem about the oil running out, oil and gas running out. But the entrepreneurial spirit of Malaysians, very strong. And that's going to be the driving factor. Now, Dr. Mahathir, what does it tell us about our democracy? It just tells us that Malaysians are generally quite not very politically active. You know, that people do not question so many things. I mean, the man has basically destroyed democracy in Malaysia. He has brought development. He gave us Twin Towers and stuff like that. But people, Malaysians generally seems to think that the material things are more important than the intellectual or the software bits of things or human rights and stuff like that. And that is still true today. So that is the sad state of Malaysian democracy. When, you know, laws where they brought back prevention without trial, detention without trial, that, yeah, you know, and this was all just covered in, you know, 2 paragraphs and just accepted. People don't question this kind of thing. So that is the sad state of Malaysian democracy. Mahathir coming back, an old man who keeps hounding prime ministers. I don't know, I really don't know, because I think deep down inside, there are a few things that the current regime has done that truly upsets him. And like every good, you know, old man who gets very cranky His legacy, his industrialization policy, all these are being dismantled. The role of the royal families, they seem to play a bigger role nowadays. No, I think Dr. Mahathir was one of the few politicians that took the bond. So I think these kind of things are tricky to deal with, right? But he had a vision for the Malays to progress in a certain way, to break away from their feudal mode, And I think what he sees in Najib is a regression back to a more docile Malay class people who accept things more. That's not a good thing in his eyes. Some people argue that that's just the way it is. So we shall see lah. But that's what it tells you about Malaysian democracy. Hankering for an old guy who destroyed democracy is quite sad. Okay, can we take more questions?
Yes. So we might extend question time for another 15 minutes. So there was one. Oh, you've had your hand up a long time. So this young gentleman here, and then black shirt.
I have a question about the constitution. As a lawyer, do you think Malaysia's constitution is fair for all Malaysians? And if it's not, is the PKR willing to make amendments or remove some parts of the constitution to make it fair for all, and thus risk losing some support from the community?
Hi, Mr. Wong Chen. My question is short. I just wanted to find out that is that a high possibility for Malaysia to go bankruptcy, and how far are we? How close? Again, that's my question. Thank you.
Okay. You want to take one more?
Yeah, can I take one more?
That's quite short, so let's take one more. We'll go up the front and then I'll come around to the back, okay?
Thanks, Wong Chen. I want to ask a question about Dr. Mahathir's appearance at Bersih 4, and he was widely quoted as calling for people's power removal of Najib. Now, I'm all in favor of Kuasa Rakyat, but is there one way of reading this as a coded call for some sort of intervention by military or other non-elected forces to take an executive action? I mean, in the context of what has happened in Egypt recently, and well, I suppose you could say even he was referring to the Marcos context. There's some elements of that there. Is that at all a danger?
Okay, the Constitution. The Constitution requires 2/3 to amend it. The current position where the position of the Agong and the royal family is protected by Constitution. The privileges of the positive discrimination privileges of the Malay community are also there. We take the position, PKR's position is very clear. We have no issues with those. We really don't have any issues with those. We believe on the socio-economic aspect. The Constitution is not a document that will create economic policy per se. You can say that the rights of the Malays have to be protected in the Constitution. That's just the way that was the social contract that our forefathers signed, right? And there are valid reasons for doing so. There are purely valid reasons for doing so. But the Constitution also does not discriminate. It doesn't really discriminate the other races other than allotting space for education and also for civil servants' position. Now, economic policies wise, moving forward, PKR's position is very clear. We will not run a new economic model style. We will look at it from a class point of view. So if you're poor, then we help you. If you're not poor, then we help you less, right? So, and we know that the impact on the Malay community is the biggest, or at least the Bumiputra community, because once you put in Sabah Sarawak, then it's really quite bad, right? So if we deal with class rather than race on the economic policies, it doesn't really mean that we are diverting from the Constitution. Constitution is a document that can only be changed through a 2/3 majority vote. If one day all the Malays feel that they don't need protection on this kind of clauses in the Constitution, then they go to Parliament and vote together with us to remove it. But that day is not now, and that day may come in the future. I'm quite positive it will. If we get the living standards of everybody up to a certain level, you know, middle class people don't fight each other. They don't look at people as Malay or Indian or Chinese generally. Yeah. So once we reach that level, then the country is ready to amend its constitution. So we have declared publicly and many times that we are there to defend the constitution. And as a member of parliament, I am there to defend the constitution. Now the question about Malaysia being bankrupt and how close are we to bankruptcy? No country goes into bankruptcy. It goes through waves of boom and bust. Every 7 to 8 years, the business cycle goes up and down. So we're not in any danger of bankruptcy. What we're in danger of is the government not having enough money. The country is not the government. The country is, you know, made of people, businessmen, employers, employees. You know, that continues. The government takes taxes from the people and supposed to run it to provide social services, to provide roads and all this. But roads is, you know, now it's all toll. Right? A lot of these services are given up to privatization. So the government could technically be bankrupt in about, my guess, 10 to 15 years if they continue the current trend. Yeah? And that's because the oil money will run out. The oil reserves in Malaysia, oil and gas reserves, gas about 40 plus years, oil about 25, 26 years. In 12 years, we'll reach peak oil, where the production of oil in Malaysia will go into terminal decline. And oil and gas represents 40%, somewhere between 25 to 40% of the government's revenue. So if they continue to spend in this way, and suddenly the oil keeps reducing, they're in trouble. So then when the government cannot function, then we have a problem, because then social services will be cut, civil servants will be out of job. So the government could technically be bankrupt in about, my guess, 15 years from now, if they continue on the current trend. If they stop the rot by cutting out corruption, and they start to rationalize the whole process by growing the economy, when they grow the economy, the civil service could filter out back into the private sector. If you do that, then the government will have a civil service with about 800,000, a good fair size, right? And 700,000 have gone back to the private sector. Everybody has a job. That's the way to do it. Now, if you go there and take a chainsaw and start cutting out civil servants, you're going to create an economic disaster of epic proportion, I swear to you. You know, it's not in the interest of PKR to reduce the civil service by sacking them. It's not possible. It's suicidal, not just politically but economically, because most of the civil servants and most Malaysians are 85% in debt, right? You know, they just survive day to day. Now, if you remove, say, 100,000 civil servants, then you have 100,000 times 5 in the family who's going to be suffering. So 500,000 people will be pushed into a lower income status. That's going to create massive problems. Yeah? So it's not in our interest to cut all this out. Our interest is to grow the economy, then let the civil servants filter back out into the private sector on their own voluntary move, you know, because it's better or whatever it is. Okay? So that's your thing. Now let's deal with Dr. Mahathir, whether it's a coded thing for the military to intervene. I don't think so, because the Malaysian military has never played any role other than May 13 on, you know, to stabilize the thing. And after May 13, they gave back the power back to the civilian politicians. So that tradition doesn't exist. It exists in Thailand, it exists, you know, frequently in Thailand, and to some extent exists in Indonesia as well, right? That is not the, I don't think that's what Dr. Mahathir is saying. And also you have to know that the army is really, you know, Askar Diraja. I mean, basically it means is the king's army. They are apolitical. I really believe the army is apolitical, and they're loyal to the king, and therefore by way they're also loyal to the constitution. But they're not going to step in, and they're not going to take over or have a coup. We just don't have that tradition, and we're not about to start one. It's not in the interest of the opposition to gain power through such means. It just creates more constitutional headache for future generations to come. Yeah? Okay?
Okay, maybe just two more
Two more questions.
from this side.
Okay, sure.
So there's a gentleman in the blue shirt here, and then the lady at the back.
Hi. We all know that in Malaysia, elections are won in the heartlands and the villages. So, what is your strategy to win the next election? How are you going to influence the majority, I guess, to vote for PKR?
Maybe we can take turns then. So let's go to the
Yeah.
front and then at the back.
Hi, Mr. Chen. Thank you for coming. I just have one short question, because seeing all the rallies going on in KL and the rest of the world, there's just one question that seems to play on my mind that I can't seem to somehow find the answer to. If, say, all these rallies are demanding for clean election, clean government, and so on, what would be the next step for the opposition to take regarding ensuring that that is done? And if the Prime Minister is to step down, regardless of whether it's in a respected manner or not, who would be the best candidate in the opposition side for the Prime Ministership? Thank you.
At the very back.
Thank you very much for the talk. I was just wondering whether Malaysia have the rules and regulation about donation. So is it for politicians particularly? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, let me deal with the heartland villages and the election strategy. I can't share with you election strategy in a public forum, but it's quite easy. I mean, like every election in the rural area, the most important is the brand recognition of anything. So if PKR wants to stand in the rural area, and we don't really fight in rural area, we fight in semi-rural. But if you want to fight in rural areas, you have to create an image, a brand image. So we'll definitely have to spend a lot of time branding the logo and the candidate. Finding a good candidate is essential as well. That will swing you 20-30% of the vote. And a good local candidate means the local boy or local woman that grew up there, that has an extended family network. Because most of this campaigning is not done in the city style. It's all done in houses through personal relationships and bonding. We've seen the seat of Ijuk and Lumut, which are semi-rural, right? Where we brought in a candidate that performed really well. And the trick is because he's a popular man there. He's got 50 cousins, 21 nieces, things like that. That helps a lot. So that's the election strategy, really. And also to get some money going there, not a lot of money, but to make sure that you have sufficient money for him to run campaigns for at least a year and a half. So those kind of things. Logistically, if you have the money and you have the right candidate and you're willing to put effort in it, you can win any seat in the rural area. Whether we have the ability to do it, that's another question, because we really don't have the money to do it. And at politics level, finding a candidate is, it's really difficult, because everybody wants to put their man in there, and this is an internal party issue, right? And this happens in UMNO, it happens in PKR, it happens in PAS and all that. So, but the party that can resolve all these issues and go down and work fast will win the rural heartland. So it's not what we call a fixed deposit, or that is an unbeatable seat. We won Lumut. I mean, Lumut was a stronghold of the government, right? And the right candidate with the right mentality and a bit of money can do that. Okay? Now, let's see. Clean elections. How do we ensure clean elections? We really can't do anything. I hate to burst your bubble, but it's just nothing we can do in Parliament, because we don't have the numbers to vote for any bills to be amended for better election, right? Now, if the opposition should rule, who will be the leader? I think the choice of the leader will need, you need proper consensus. So you need to talk to both DAP and Harapan Baru, and if PAS is still with us, we have to talk to PAS. I mean, we wanted Wan Azizah to be Menteri Besar. Okay, that gives you a simple explanation. She's good to be Menteri Besar, right? But she wasn't allowed to be because, of course, the Sultan has his own opinion on the matter, but also PAS objected to it. So in the same way, if we win the election, we can put Wan Azizah as the candidate, but then again, the component party members will have to give back their feedback, right? So otherwise it won't work. So I wouldn't say there will be an opposition leader that is going to slide in for sure. It just had to be negotiated by the parties. So, but once you come to power, negotiations will be very fast, I can assure you. Like what happened in 2008 in Selangor, right? We had a day and a half to negotiate, and then Tan Sri Khalid became the Menteri Besar. Once the politician stands power, it's very simple, very cincai for everybody. Okay, now donation. The laws on donation. There are no laws on donation. You can donate any money you want, but there is a law on how much you can spend during the election campaign period. So it's very specific. It's 200,000 for a member of parliament seat, spent by myself on my own, but my money, or people give me money. I just have to keep the accounts for 200,000 and submit it. That's all. It's just an administrative exercise. But if someone spends the money on my behalf or puts some advertising in national TV, that kind of thing, I don't think it counts. Yeah. So that limit on how much you can spend during the election period, that period of 14 days, is more an accounting thing rather than anything else. So political donation is just wide open. The government has invited us to speak or to join them in a consultative council on how to do political funding reform. Yeah, I think we're agreeable to some issues, but we'd like the 2.6 billion issue to be settled first. But secondly, more important is that you cannot do political funding amendments without looking at the general election laws. There's no point just looking at this tiny section of it. You really have to reform the whole entire election apparatus. For us, political funding must always come from the state, some percentage. That means the government pay political parties, right? If political parties have to go out and look for Dato Sri, Tan Sri, Dato for donation, there's going to be, some undue influence activity going on for certain, right? If a Tan Sri give me R1 million, I don't think he's giving it out of his heart, or the love for the nation, or whatever it is. I'm sure that there's going to be some request that he needs later on. So we don't want that. So I think we want the state to pay most of it, and we want to limit, how much donation one individual can give. Maybe it's $50,000 or $10,000 or something like that. So those are the mix that we want. And the last thing we want is we want to make sure that every political party has a limit to how much they can hold in terms of assets. Yeah. Say if I'm UMNO and I got 10 billion assets, if I invest carefully, not like 1MDB, I could easily generate 500 million a year, a return of 5%, right? 500 million a year will mean that I will perpetually be in government forever, because I know no one can raise 500 million a year to fight me. So there are things that we want to amend in political funding, but it has to be big and it has to be all-encompassing with the right philosophy. Limits to assets that it can hold, limits to what individual can give for donation. Basically, it's the amount of donation is where they can give me the money, and they call me at 2 o'clock in the morning, and you can just turn off the phone. I don't have to pick it up, right? So that's what we want to do. Okay, so that's it.
Yeah, I think we might end it there. Thank you so much, Wong Chen, for coming. Just before you go, I mentioned at the beginning that you can become a member of SIAC online, and that means that you'll be on our mailing list and hear about our latest events. But we do have one coming up on the 2nd of October. It's our ASEAN Forum, and the focus will be the ASEAN Economic Community and what moving into the AEC means for the region. So if you have any interest in that, please go to the SIAC